Hey everyone, my new build JFC2000 centered around the chainsaw double trouble. It's probably one of my stronger builds and it's particularly good against a lot of the meta builds. So the build, however, is very complex and there's a lot of different purge options and combos and techs that I also discovered while making it. So I might have a little bit less PvP clips in this video, but you can check the timestamps if you just want to skip ahead. Hey everybody, welcome to another build challenge video, this time centering on the chainsaw. And I think that this build is probably one of my most dense and adaptable and sort of new techs being used to date. So I'm really excited to present this one to you. It actually started as a salad arms build challenge, but the natural synergy that I noticed with the salad arms and the chainsaw kind of orientated me that way. And I would say this build is now more just about the chainsaw. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So before I jump into the build combos and all that stuff, I just want to talk about first the chainsaw and the salad arms and the unique aspects of these two pieces that make this build really come together and how they sort of force the decisions of everything else. So I'm going to start with the salad arms. It's a little bit easier. The salad arms are very hard to justify. I went through many iterations of this build and have a couple biped options, couple tank options. This is the most successful one to date, I think by far, but the salad arms pose a problem. They're 21,000 weight, and they basically direct compete with the 46S arms, which have a little bit more melee spec. The firearm spec is particularly noticeable, and then the weight difference makes it just so very hard to ever justify the salad arms. However, there are a couple unique things about the salad arms that we can take. The recoil is going to come into effect for this build with the Zimmerman Gauchin, and also the free firing Kurosawa spamming uncharged. The arm load is the real key here. So the 46S cannot carry the Kurosawa and the chainsaw in the same hand because the weight of this Kurosawa is 10,000 and the saw is 5,090. So the salad arms basically force the arm loads here. The tankiness and the weight made me realize that there was no point trying to spare any room here. Just go full tank, and that's going to force the frame parts. But we'll get to that in a sec. The chainsaw we'll take a look at next. So there's a couple of techs that I kind of came up with, and also just interesting strategies that some people might already know. But one of the cool things is the charged chainsaw actually blocks mini stuns like the charged slicer does, or similar to a shield. It does not reduce impact. However, it does block status buildup from your left side. So that's going to come in for our Stungun matchup. I will show that in a little bit when we get to the matchup specific section. But yeah, you can use the chainsaw to block mini stuns like pulse blades, or charged pulse blade attacks, charged laser blade attacks, Wuergers, and then you can use that to set up your follow-up charged Kurosawa. You might be tempted to let fly the charged chainsaw, but the animation is a little slow, and they can back up out of it after doing their attack and QB, and then you get punished. So I prefer the charged Kurosawa for that reason. But another really notable advantage of the double trouble, other than just its sheer damage, is the direct hit adjustment is massive, meaning that this weapon is very good at penetrating high resistance builds during the stagger punish, and because the direct hit portion does not factor in resistances. And so given that the majority of our damage is direct hit adjusted, almost 3-to-1, it's a huge feature for this weapon that no tank is going to be able to survive the stagger punish. So we have a very strong incentive to make the double trouble stagger very reliable. One thing to note as well about being such a heavy mech is that we have over 2,000 stability. We have 2338 on this build. So if you survive, if you stagger them without having at least 338 impact built up, you can not pop your expansion and let the chainsaw finish its punish if they assault armor you, because you're going to have enough stability to survive the assault armor and continue with the chainsaw punishing them. So unless they buff assault armor to 3k, as I've put in a ticket, we're not going to have to worry about getting staggered with this build, and we don't really need to assault boost tech it to reduce it either. So just let the chainsaw finish its punish. And another nice thing about that is we have a disincentive on this melee build to run assault armor, which is really good because pulse armor is much more reliable, easier to use, and also it synergizes with our stability very directly because we have such a huge bar. Having that refreshed is really taxing, and this is going to help out with a lot of different matchups where assault armor is a very you lose the match if you don't make the assault armor work. So that is a huge synergy for the double trouble as well. One other note I would make too is that the regular uncharged attack is still very strong. So you hit twice for like 2,000 damage, but multiply that by the direct hit adjustment, you're still getting a massive punish. So for if you, for whatever reason, like let's say you can't charge it because you had to stagger them with the Zimmerman on the left side, just swapping and then doing the regular slash is fine. You'll still get a decent stagger punish. So don't worry too much about setting up the charged chainsaw every single time unless the mech's your opponent's AP really demands it. Another really cool tech is the fact that the hover mode of the Tetra synergizes with the chainsaw so well, because while you cannot AB, you can QB with the chainsaw and then have the charge attack fly. So you'll notice that as long as you let the chainsaw go right at the end of the QB lunge and don't like let the mech sort of do that little wiggle at the end where they stabilize, your chainsaw will not decharge. So you can actually use that to fling yourself towards an enemy. I'll just show you an example against the mech here. It can catch a lot of people off guard, and given that we're running the Acellus, this comes up a lot with gap closing from outside Acellus range and just getting the chainsaw at a crazy range. It's better if you can QB in, though, and not need the chainsaw's lunge, because the chainsaw's lunge is not spectacular, so much better if you could actually QB inside of Acellus range, but like right next to them, and then do the command grab like that. Let's jump into the actual parts now and how they all chain together to come up with this build. So the Double Trouble and Carousel have been covered, taking advantage of the Salad Arms and the ARR build challenge. The Chang Chen and the Zimmerman were it took me a while to come up with this. So I tried different missiles, laser drones, etc. The truth is that missiles are just too slow. For rushdown builds, they don't contribute enough, and the Carousel was high risk as it is because it overheats a lot. So I rationaled that we want a weapon that we can swap to and use as our primary on the right shoulder, because you're going to have the overheated Kurosawa anyways most of the time, so we'll go ahead and just put a primary weapon there. I didn't know what at the time, though. The Zimmerman on the left side is interesting. It's actually because it gives us access to a higher burst impact than the Kurosawa can do on its own. So one big problem with this weapon, being a plasma, is that it does 1930 impact on burst. However, it's not all applied immediately, sort of like the Javelin Alpha, where it has like a residual cloud that applies the rest. But even still, there can be like bipeds and whatnot that are 2,000 or more stability, and we don't want that when we're doing the Kurosawa. When I fire the Kurosawa, I want them to be staggered. But having the Zimmerman on the left side allows them to be paired, and you can fire either the shotgun first and then the Kurosawa, or vice versa. You can do the other way around as well, which will give you time to swap to the Chang Chen and then impact maintain and finish them off if they haven't. Or more likely, you'll have purged the Chang Chen in certain matchups and have punch there to stagger extend, giving you access to the charged chainsaw punish. So I'll go into that in the combo section after the frame parts. But the Zimmerman got forced onto the left for that reason, which is very interesting because normally you want the stagger extend on the right so that you can start charging the saw at the same time. But this actually synergizes better in this case. Okay, so that covers all of the weapons. Let's jump into the inner parts now, and then we'll default to the frame. So Kikaku was a very interesting choice here, especially because of that QB reload penalty. Look at that 1.74 seconds. But the truth is the saw is really unreliable without super high melee thrusts. So the Kikaku or the Flugel seem to be the natural choice. We don't really need boost speed because we are in hover mode a lot of the time, and we're never going to be fast anyway. So I just took the efficiency of the assault boost with the Kikaku, which is going to synergize with the the SMG and the shotgun extremely powerfully. You'll see that again in the matchups. But yeah, the Kikaku was interesting. Cheap QBs for shuffling, even though we don't shuffle that fast. Really good assault boost velocity assault boost duration, which is more synergistic with our weapon payload. And the chainsaw gets all the melee thrust that it's going to need, which also helps us do a command grab combo as well with the chainsaw. That'll combo into the chainsaw. The Acellus, we need the Kurosawa to be like 100% reliable basically at close range, and we only fight in close anyways with no missiles. We don't need the Abbott, and we don't really need to track at medium range either because we have access to punch to gap close, which is another thing that the Kikaku is going to do for kite matchups. We're going to purge the Sawa and the saw and use punch to gap close, and then switch into the chainsaw and the shotgun. One thing about that you should know for kite matchups is that you actually can't melee shuffle like normal. So when you melee lunge once, your QB's not reloaded, so you actually have to alternate QB lunge cancel with QB, QB lunge cancel with AB, QB lunge cancel with QB, QB lunge cancel with AB. So, I did not mean to purge the SMG there. Let's do that again. So when you're up against kites, typically what you'll do is you'll keep this in the right hand open. You'll melee lunge with this, QB cancel, switch to AB, and then just keep doing that. This guy's obviously not moving away, but you just keep doing that. And then once you get in range, you switch to Zimmerman, and then transition into Assault Boost. And yeah, you're going to be firing these Zimmerman, which can actually fire with the Chang Chen despite the recoil. It blooms a little bit, but not enough to matter. And this is a really cool combo. With 140 recoil, we can actually just have a massive magazine with the Chang Chen and the Zimmerman peppering for burst impact. So we'll rapidly stun kites. And we still have access to gap close with the melee punch to get in close first. And the efficiency means that we have enough assault boost time to actually dump the whole magazine of the Chang Chen, which is very large at 45 rounds. So we actually want the Chang Chen for its magazine size. That's why I'm not running the Ludlow or the Etzogen. We want the ability to just have like as many Zimmerman salvos in this combo as possible. So getting 2 Zimmermans plus the full Chang Chen is usually enough to like put them on the threshold of stagger. If a punch won't do it, then just reload and you'll have them staggered by that point. For inner parts, we run the Santai for capacity. Obviously, we need that to chase down kites. With how heavy we are not the fastest moving mech, at least from appearance. However, don't underestimate the melee lunge even on the punch. Look how fast you move here. You're going to move like over 600. So yeah, you can actually gap close really fast. However, melee lunging is energy intensive, so that's why we run the Santai. We just need to have that super high capacity. And notice as well too, the energy supply is a little low at 3000. There's not a lot of matchups that we need to keep all of our weapons, but you have some options. You can purge the Chang Chen to get 36 for certain like melee builds where you just want the Karasawa after blocking their mini stun opener. But a lot of the times what you're going to purging is the Karasawa, and there you're going to get 34 70. So, or sorry, hold on. Was that right? Karasawa to 0. Yeah, so like just under 4,000. Or no, here we go. That's more like, I was like, the Karasawa is way more energy intensive. Yeah, you're gonna get almost 6,000 EN supply if you purge the Karasawa. And the Zimmerman Chang Chen is threatening. Like we do that for shields, for example. So the Karasawa, there's no point. They're just gonna parry it. So I'll just fire it once, then immediately purge it. But at the start of the match, maybe I get a lucky stagger, but usually I don't bank on it, so I just fire and forget. Just be careful. Don't forget it automatically weapon swaps when you do that, so don't expect to have the punch available. So I'll just show you here now. Charge Karasawa, purge it. It's going to automatically swap to my Chang Chen for me. I wish they would get rid of that. But yeah, so that basically is the work of the Santai there. I did forget to mention something about the Kikaku, which is that the booster stats are unaffected by your weight when you're assault boosting, as well as the cost discount of your core. So normally you'd be running the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 NGI, like those heavy Brazil. However, one really cool thing about having the Kikaku is we can assault boost shuffle a lot faster than those boosters, or more frequently, I should say, than those boosters can. Just looking at the core here, by the way, that booster efficiency stat is not changing anything about my Kikaku shuffling. It just is a flat, I think it's like 80 or 70% is of whatever the listed stat for QB cost is on the booster whenever you're assault boosting. But you'll see here, I can spam shuffle, and this is really helpful when we're up against double Harrises, for example, against kites like lambs, because it allows us to dodge frequently and make sure that they can't just overwhelm us with charged impact hits unless we choose to take them out of our own accord. Moving on to the frame parts. So in the spirit of the saddle arms, we're just going to stack resistances and make our build as tanky as possible and just win a lot of fights through attrition. We can survive a lot of stagger, but like you can actually survive 2 stagger punishes for even some of the melee combos in the game. So this thing is a monster. That's going to give us a lot of opportunities to try to set up a charged double trouble. So I went first with the legs. I knew it had to be a tetra to synergize with the saw, so just went with the heavy legs. We're going to need the load support in order to, especially with the salad arms. So barrel it is. Mind Alpha Core synergizes with the Santai for EN supply. It's the only reason we're able to make this supply as high as it is and still have the EN capacity. We could have ran the HAL, however, I would have had to make weight compromises in the head. And more importantly, though, the stability is more valuable to me than the extra little bit of resistances we had there. The EN supply is nice, but again, I'm just looking to get this as much stability as possible, and taking that, it might not be a lot relative to our total pool, but all the same, the resistances weren't that much more. I think the EN supply is the only real contender here that's making me consider it. If you want, you can put this on though, just downgrade the head. Let me just see what that would look like for you. So if you want, you can run, I think maybe the knockhead will work. Nope, not quite. Oh yeah, you know what? I don't even think the Howl would work here then. You'd have to run a head that was just too light to actually justify it. Yeah, this is too much resistance. So there you go. I was right with the Mind Alpha Core in the beginning. So run Mind Alpha Core. Okay, so the chainsaw has the blocking effect the same as the charged slicer and functions like shields in giving you mini stun immunity. It also blocks status buildup from the stun guns, which is quite cool. Now, its block hitbox is a little to the left though, so you have to strafe to the right in order to make it more reliable. This is particularly noticeable against certain types of kicks and weird angles, so I would just encourage you always to start backing up and strafing to the right as somebody does something that you want to block. So if you're rushing them, switch back and move backwards. The elevation wise, it's better to have them a little bit above you than below you as well. Seems like the hitbox is elevated a little bit. It does not reduce impact. It just does damage reduction, which is enough for what we need from it. We have a lot of stability anyways. So I just want to thank Fox and Gray, by the way, for helping me figure out all this stuff by helping me test I had a sneaking suspicion this was functioning like shield, so thank you two for helping me get some footage for the video. Yeah, so blocking is really good against all mini stuns that can be dealt like melee initiations or defensive melees like the charged laser blade kicks. It's one of our strongest tools against double zims. It is great for shutting down stun guns. It is yeah, it's just an all-around like great tool anytime you're fighting somebody and there's not a reason to have these Zimmermen working for you at a given moment. I'm just showing you guys the various stun gun positions and like when the status effect builds up and doesn't here. But in the meantime, I'll use this as an opportunity to talk about your matchups against stun guns. So if you're ever versing stun guns, usually what you want to do is be in hover mode and backpedaling with the charged Karasawa ready and your chainsaw blocking their stun guns while you strafe back into the right. If they're a lightweight, you may not need the Karasawa, in which case you could just purge it and run the SMG shooting them the whole time, and just allow your massive AP pool and resistances to help you survive long enough to stagger them, because they're really hoping to burst you down fast. They're usually vulnerable. If they're a heavier one, you're going to need the chainsaw punish. If they're a light one, or sorry, you're going to need the Karasawa. If they're a lighter double stun gun, then you may not need the Karasawa. You can just let the SMG work for you. As soon as they've dumped their mag, swap to the Zimmerman, fire it, swap back to the chainsaw, and start charging it again. And you should be able to win the stagger race. Plus, having pulse armor instead of assault armor is really helping us out here. They can't afford to get staggered even once, or they're going to basically die immediately because of the chainsaw's punish. One thing as well, be careful not to overheat the chainsaw when you're up against stun guns. That can accidentally happen too. You can always assault boost away and shuffle because of the extremely good shuffle of the Kikaku. Okay, let's take a look at the combo section up next. Just because I have to do this pretty fast, take particular note of what order and when I swap weapons and when I QB cancel certain animations, as most of those are required to make these combos work. And this is just a handful, there are more combos. But the most basic one is when you have the charged Karasawa and charged saw ready, you can QB lunge into charged Karasawa and lunge down. This is for like your typical 1800 or so stability mechs that you want to get the saw punish on. If you need more impact bursts, like for heavy bipeds and whatnot, you can actually throw in the Zimmerman on the left side while you swap to right, switch to punch. You could swap to chainsaw here or the previous moment, and you can do a chainsaw punch that way. We also have access to blocks, which can be used to set up charged Karasawa. This is particularly good for melee. The block tech can be put in front of either of those two combos, by the way. Okay, here you have access to another combo. If you don't want to purge the Chang Chen, you can go for this one, which is block a mini stun into lunging chainsaw. That's an input read from Milkumon, but you can typically we won't have that with human opponents because they can activate a parry frame. Here we go. We have a reverse joint. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to block the kick and lunge in. There I do the QB4. Just be careful with input reading. It's easy to accidentally pre-fire the Karasawa in the middle of your QB with the reverse joint hover. Here is a wombo combo I came up with. This can kill even the strongest tank in the game, basically, from 0 stagger or impact loss. It's very important to do that QB animation cancel there. You have to swap off of the Zimmerman, and then you can finish off with the chainsaw again. Now that is not shield parryable, just so you know, on wake up. You cannot deploy a shield in time to stop that follow-up chainsaw. This is the heaviest mech we could build, and that is the little bit of health left by the time I finished that combo, but just enough I could just hose down with the Kurosawa and Zimmerman to finish off the fight. In relation to that wombo combo, I figured out how to prevent the pulse armor from canceling the charge up of the Kurosawa. You just need to pop the pulse armor right before it's fully charged. Some notes about the tech is that it does seem to be a little bit more reliable if your boost is active rather than just like raw walking. And also you don't want to be QBing or assault boost shuffling while you're doing it. It seems to make it more unreliable. However, you can assault boost or be in hover mode without issue. So typically I would initiate like some way like this. So now I can Kurosawa, charge Saw into the command grab combo. I would use this tech on matchups where we're up against tanks that are running pulse armor. Just get it at the beginning of the match this way and threaten the command grab so that they have to waste their pulse armor at the start. Okay, a handful of different kite matchups I think I'll start with. We'll do a lamb first. The strategy is the same for them. Basically, we're purging the Kurosawa every time, and depending on how tanky they are, we either keep the saw or we just purge that as well for additional speed and boost efficiency. But we are just cruising anyways with the Kurosawa purge, and our energy supply is huge regardless. So your melee punch is going to get you moving at like 600 or more boost speed. So this is plenty fast, and the sustain of the Santai combined with our stability preventing us from needing to dodge most of their attacks means we just have a ton of energy, and it's very hard to stay away from this build. I'll mention here now too, the build probably is better with the Etsugen. I don't like using meta weapons, and the Etsugen is definitely like way too strong in terms of it not deflecting out at crazy range. But if you want, you can put the Etsugen on to help you out against rifle kite builds and laser kite builds a lot. I would honestly say just swap it. I like the Chen just because I have no builds that run it, and this build does have a unique benefit to it, which is that magazine size, but Etsugen projectile speed is a major problem in this game, and the Etsugen having faster projectile speed is what makes all the difference in the SMGs. It's just not even close to comparable. So yeah, you can throw the Etsugen on this build if you just want to have a better matchup against kites. So some things to be cautious about. Remember that the chainsaw's lunge is not very good at vertical like all melee, and so one of the issues with Tetras is trying to maintain level to set up the chainsaw. This is not going to be an issue for a lot of our matchups where we purge the saw, like for lightweights and whatnot, but for elevator heavy kites, or sorry, I wouldn't even call those kites, sorry, heavy elevator builds where we do need the chainsaw to make sure that we can stagger them, you are going to want to make sure that you're setting up the chainsaw and don't get too locked into hover mode. You're going to need to have the ability to go up and down, and so I usually don't bother with the QB gap close against those builds. I just get in close and assault boost and make sure I have access to vertical thrust if I need it. And then one other thing too is that don't forget that if you charge the chainsaw and you pop your expansion, it decharges your saw. You do have enough time to reactivate it in a lot of cases, but like if you do decide to run assault armor in this build, you can still have time to guarantee the combo, but the timing is tight and it's very easy to mix it up. So I would recommend you practice that in the test environment before you try to throw it in an actual match. So yeah, pop the chainsaw, pop the expansion. As soon as you can move, you can start charging. I usually will QB forward just to animation cancel and start it. It's a little bit of a time saver, I believe. So just QB forward and then it's good to go. Plus the QB is going to enhance your saw anyway, getting you closer. So it's a little bit of a safer way to get around that issue. Another one, I keep saying one other thing, but the chainsaw can also overheat. So that is something else. You don't want to be blocking too long anyways, because this doesn't impact reduce, it is just damage. But notice the red bar there, we are actually overheating the saw, and you will overheat it if you hold it for a super long, extended period of time. I don't know if that'll come up for you or not, because it's very unusual. It's more for when you're like trying to set up or bait in a charged pulse blade or other mini stun. You can often lose track of time and then overheat the saw. So something to be aware of. With heavy Tetras, making good use of cover is going to be a major feature with builds like this. Granted, we are very offensive with this build, and so it's more just like when we need to get our impact regenerated back because we've finished the first stagger race and whatnot. Tall cover is preferable, especially if you have the ability to have a piece of cover go all the way to the roof. It lets you orbit around it, and Tetras are really good at maneuvering around cover because of their enhanced QB thrust when they're in hover mode. So a really strong way to take advantage of the terrain. So the general strategy for elevator builds is going to be whether or not you need the the Chang Chen. It's really good for maintaining impact at range. That's why I don't want to purge it. And if it's a heavier elevator, then you might want to bring the Kurosawa. You may not need it for lighter ones. You can just make do with the SMG and Zimmerman. Just really set up that stagger at the moment of your choosing. You can use a punch to break stagger, by the way. That's a really good way to make the chainsaw much easier to set up because the Chang Chen takes a little while against heavier builds. It can be hard to time exactly when they get staggered. So keep in mind, you have access to almost like a mini shotgun pretty much. This will go for pretty much all elevator builds, though usually you don't want to purge anything against them unless they're light. All right, elevator option with the reverse joint, but is transitioning into double Zimmermans. The main idea with this one is basically just not to get kicked by the reverse joint and take advantage of the fact that you can block their kick or just agree to take their double Zimmerman shot in order to set up your Kurosawa. If they're tankier, you might need to Kurosawa, swap left side, fire the Zimmerman quickly, and then also swap the right side so you're ready to start the punch combo into chainsaw. All right, everybody's favorite, double Zimmerman. Sadly, I didn't get a double Zim PS shield, but our strategy for them is to ditch the Karasawa or just charge fire it at the start and then purge it immediately and transition to SMG Zimmerman shots and assault boosting just to make it so that we're reducing impact over time and they're getting up a lot of impact and they can't parry it all because of the SMGs just sustain. Another thing too is that they can't kick us because if we swap to the chainsaw, we can command grab punish them and go into that combo that basically ends the fight immediately. So the only thing is it takes some time for the chainsaw to charge up, so you do have to do it on prediction. Usually if I know they're going in for a double Zim, I'll just swap to the saw and damage mitigate it and have it charged, and a lot of the times they just can't resist throwing the kick right after out of force of habit, which allows us to charge Karasawa, swap back to the Zim, and then start the punch combo again. Okay, another sort of transition to another archetype. Here we have double Haldmen pulse blade. So here going for the ability to counter doubles in PS shield and then run a very comparable build. Here I don't need the saw. I would just say, unless they're like really kick heavy, you can parry the pulse blade, but builds like this are just going to tend to whittle you down to the Zimmermans and only use the pulse blade for mini stun, or sorry, for stagger punish. So I'm just going to purge it, run the charge Karasawa and Zimmerman, and just bleed their health down. And don't disregard the weapon swap here. I have the wrong sides on here, and this is while still testing the build. I was also running the Coral Gen. You wouldn't need to run that. We would be on the ground more. And just incorporating our own kicks and assault boosts to turn the fight in our favor. Even lightweights can't handle the Acellus tracking on these arms, even though their firearm spec is not the greatest. Acellus just is very oppressive against lightweights, and Alu is not going to help them that much. So yay for us and the ability to punish all the meta. Okay, double melee combos, usually running the Pulse Blade Zimmerman and another melee punish. Main thing here is just be ready to, or have the charge Karasawa ready and purge the Chang Chen. You usually don't need it unless they're like a super lightweight. And just let them throw the Pulse Blade in and fire the Karasawa once the block is completed. And you basically get a free Chainsaw Punish that way with combo number 2. If they're smart, they'll just Zimmerman you, but the thing is you can get offensive then and like oppress them with the Karasawa, and if you miss it, then transition to Zimmerman, SMG, and hover mode in order to dodge the Pulse Blade a little bit easier with your enhanced QP tests. Notice how we have over 2,000 stability, so as long as we don't get like 300 and change impact buildup when we stagger them, we actually can go right through their assault armor and continue the Chainsaw Punish for more damage and impact buildup ahead of the assault armor. So yeah, it's a really cool nature of making the most of the chainsaw stagger punish, and an even greater reason to run pulse armor. You just allows you to commit to finishing the whole saw punish and then popping the armor once you're done. Okay, that's about all time that we'll have on this video, so I'll have to cut it out here. I would say that your toughest matchup is coral damage, just because it can bypass a lot of your resistance, or all your resistance, and depending on how reliable the Kurosawa is against their mech, that's going to decide whether or not you still have a winning matchup or not. I think the worst to see would be to have a coral damage with a shield build, just because they can block your Kurosawa, and you're going to have to purge it anyways, and then swap to SMGs in move. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the build. This one is a lot of fun, and it's particularly strong against all the different meta builds. So I haven't really run into a meta build that I've had a hard time with. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments, and I'll try to answer them. So I did end up catching a double shotgun shield build. It wasn't Zimmerman's, it was more of a lightweight version, but should still illustrate the point of how to handle those matchups. Purge the Kurosawa. You're not going to need it. I didn't do it the first round here, and it ends up just hurting more than helping because I waste time giving them free impact buildup. It would be more devastating if they had the Zimmermans, but I decided to risk it because they were running Haldmens. I thought I had more time to slip this out, but they get the jump on me, which also doesn't help none. Long and short of it, though, is to just wear down their shield with the shotgun and SMG combo and set up for the punch chainsaw combo. You can survive their punish, so it's not even about winning the stagger race per se. It's more just about making sure they don't ever get their impact regenerated and sneak away after getting the stagger punish. That's like the most important thing. thought I'd throw in a tank match as well at the end just for fun, so you guys can enjoy this. I managed to get one tank in ranked before I ended up getting lost in the footage, so isn't really too much to say here. The main thing is just remembering that the Kurosawa decays a lot of its impact, so learning exactly how many Zimmerman shots you should lead with before going for the Kurosawa is valuable, and make sure that when you do land the Kurosawa, you actually get the stagger. You don't want to accidentally do what I did there and pop their pop the Kurosawa on them, but then they get to recover like half the impact. So yeah, just keep the Zimmerman, conditioning them into the stagger unless you want to go for the command grab combo mentioned earlier in the video. And that's all she wrote, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and give a like and a subscribe if you are interested in the content. Always trying to push the meta and figure out what we can make work. I am going to make a patch prediction video next, by the way, so stay tuned for that.